Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, war gamers and YouTubers? This is Boom Boxer, and last time we introduced the US CV line with the Langley, and so this time we'll complement it by showcasing the Hosho. But before we begin, please note that this replay predates to the rebalancing of the Langley to include dive bombers. So if you want to see the Langley's updated viability, I left a link in the previous episode in the description below. With that said, there's a reason why the Hosho on average does better, and I hope this replay exemplifies it well. So buckle up and let's get this show started. Reiterating what I said in the previous episode, if you want quality, you pick the US CVs, but if you want quantity, you pick IJN CVs. This generalization simplifies the situation for us, but serves this purpose by establishing some qualitative data, which is the point of emphasis I will continually stress if you want to become a better player. And the first piece of qualitative data that is crucial to understanding the Hosho versus the Langley matchup is the prep time for takeoff. And I can sit here and say that it takes 12 seconds for a Hosho fighter group to take off, whereas it takes 19 seconds for a Langley fighter group to take off. Great quantitative data, but it doesn't help. What will help is knowing across the board the Hosho queues up units faster, has the faster unit, and contrary to popular belief, has the better fighter in a 1-on-1 ratio. Once again, we're in a 2-on-2 CV battle, and we want to try to establish some early synergy. I noticed my allied Langley baiting one group of enemy fighters easterly, and this gives me enough time to catch up and assist, establishing air superiority. It's important to recognize good and bad situations early on so you can act on them, and given the limited hangar capacity at Tier 4, that was an extremely punishing decision to overextend by the enemy Langley. One thing that I would like to point out is that the enemy Hosho did have an opportunity to strafe us right here, but failed to capitalize and will pay the price. If you ever find yourself establishing numerical superiority in a similar situation, just peel off a squadron and lock the incoming fighters to deny the strafe. But just like that, we take out 2 full fighter squadrons, and in the worst case, can trade from here on out. Typically on this map, I tend to stay on the same side I spawned from early on, but noticed a particular opportunity on this during the preloading matchup and opted to sail south. Did you see it while the game was loading? There's only one DD on both sides. With both initial enemy fighter groups downed, this affords us the opportunity to be aggressive in our shot selection, and I seize that opportunity to do as much scouting as I can.
Group 2, target destroyed.
During the gameplay, I actually failed to register that both enemy CVs were down south, which will become a point of interest as the match plays out. But I did recognize a sleeping St. Louis, drop my payload, and get a flooding. And with the absence of reliable AA at tier 4s and 5, having 2 sets of torpedo bombers is a huge asset for the Hosho. We'll discuss this particular theme in a future episode with higher tier carriers, but for now, just understand that having multiple status inflicting units at your disposal enables you to do damage over time through fires or floods. And at this distance, I could have easily retreated away from the Langley's fighters, but opted to do a frontal strafe to see its effect. At the time of this recording, strafing was buffed from its token just for show state to its now air superiority equalizer state, and having already won 2 dogfights, I can afford to test a little. Continual learning, that's the only way to get better. So now that we had our first visual confirmation on the enemy formation, I feel pretty good in my decision to head towards the middle. Instead of hanging back along the 9 and 10 line, which is what I would normally do, I pushed up to the 8 line and positioned myself into a more aggressive stance. This is something I feel safe doing in an IJN CV due to the lower surface detection coupled with faster squadron reload time relative to US CVs. This is the IJN advantage. Exploit your efficient supply chain, and over the duration of a 20-minute battle, inundate your enemies with continuous payloads. And as you play CVs more and more, you have to get good at engaging your natural mid and late game predators, the Destroyer. Here, I noticed him stopping long enough for it to be a fatal mistake, and I capitalized by landing 2 torpedo hits on him in one salvo. You reach, I teach.
Enemy destroyer blown up.
But we're not out of the woods just yet. There's still an enemy St. Louis encroaching within my detectability range, and we need to sink him next. Fortunately, there's an Arkansas beta in proper positioning to capitalize on the St. Louis that momentarily shows his broadside. Devastating strike. Great shot from our BB. With my immediate threats gone, I'm now in a great position to positively influence the remainder of this battle. The lone enemy destroyer is sunk, and our carriers are outplaying the enemy carriers. The only thing keeping the enemy team afloat is their ability to aggressively engage our surface ships. While we're conceding map control and have pushed up to the 7 line, the enemy team is mainly on the 4 line, with some of them extending beyond that to the 5 and 6 even.
Group 2, we're under attack.
Remember that damage over time concept we mentioned earlier? In this instance, I noticed that New York was taking status damage and took a closer look. He appears to have prepared his fire, and with that, I have a great window of opportunity to hit him with bombers and cause a flood.
Group 2, returning. Group 2, returning.
The New York is preemptively turning away from me, so I want to position my torpedo bombers parallel and slightly leading. Which enables me to capitalize on 3 hits and a flood. But with enemy fighters inbound, I rushed my drop against the enemy Omaha a bit. All things being equal, you want to lead a bit more for destroyers and cruisers to compensate for their greater speed.
Concentrate fire on the target.
The enemy team has taken the lead.
So even though my torpedo bombers are taking damage here, there's no need for me to panic. I still have 3 torpedo bombers in reserve, and understand that I'm still going to be at full capacity for a while. Hangar capacity management is an important concept to grasp, and you cannot be afraid to take risks and lose planes for the greater good. By taking those early hits, the enemy fighters got baited too close to Allied positions, and we take down yet another fighter squadron. And with no fighter support, the enemy torpedo bombers are easy picking for us.
Group 2, taking fire. Ready for takeoff.
Every once in a while, it's important to make reads on how well your team is doing in achieving a strategic goal of winning the battle. With a little over 200 points and no flags under our control, our team needs to secure some kills while denying them the same, or this match will preemptively end.
Target destroyed.
And this is where having a forward position, especially with a Japanese carrier, benefits the most. My natural short takeoff time, coupled with my forward position, enables me to maximize my contributions to my team.
Stand by for instructions. Over. Group 3, we're under attack. Group 4, awaiting instructions.
Against this Phoenix, you can notice that my torpedo bombers are flying in circles, and this will happen if you do not give them adequate timing and spacing to properly execute a drop. It's very important to face the direction you want to drop prior to executing the drop.
Torpedoes to starboard.
I was very fortunate here that 2 torpedoes actually even activated, given the proximity of my drop. Had the Phoenix turned in both times, neither of those drops would have actually activated. At this juncture, even though we're matching the enemy team in kills, they are about to capitalize on their third cap. And with that third cap, they'll be receiving a little more than 100 points per minute. We have to change the tide of this battle within the next 5 minutes or admit defeat. Understanding that their CVs are more or less coming on empty in reserves due to poor hangar capacity management and their battleships are scattered, we have a good opportunity here to take out the retreating Congo and focus fire down the Wyoming at B flag. Additionally, it's time to put my speed to the test and cap C flag, given that it's no longer under sustained enemy pressure.
Concentrate fire on the enemy warship.
Group 3, taking fire. Group 3, returning. Target destroyed. Group 2, awaiting instructions. Group 4, we're under attack.
Carrier Hosho, Kraken unleashed.
Returning to ship. Group 3, ready for takeoff.
Waypoint reached.
Group 2, standing by for instructions. Over. Group 3, airborne.
B flag is under our control and will soon be capping C, thus eliminating the time pressure we had moments earlier. But with 7 minutes to go, we still need to secure a few additional kills in order to be on top with points.
Group 4, ready. Group 2, standing by for instructions. Over. Group 2, we're under attack. Group 4, maintaining present course.
At this point, I no longer have reserves, but I'm still at optimum fighting conditions. My fighter can still scout, and I have 2 full loadouts of torpedo bombers. Don't be afraid to take appropriate risks in the early and mid game, but also be mindful of your need for long-term sustainability, a critical balancing act that every CV player needs to do in every game.
Group 2, taking fire. Group 3, returning. Group 4, we're under attack. 4, returning to ship.
One thing I would like to mention as we begin to close out this game is that I typically try to pick out average games to demonstrate. Now, the 180k damage I did here is an outlier, but the decision making I exhibited is something I do every game, which is the point of emphasis I hope all of you that are watching take in. You have to find ways to read the tide of battle and then enforce your will upon the battlefield. And all that decision making starts with great qualitative fundamentals supplemented with attention to detail quantitative data.
Maintaining present course. Group 3, taking fire. Group 4, we're under attack. Group 3, returning. Group 4, returning to ship.
Enemy battleship sunk.
The funny thing here is that had our opponents taken a defensive posture after they capped the 3 flags, or even 2, they might have actually had won this battle. Even now, we're scrambling behind in points with 3 minutes to go. Talk about bad timing. And this is the part where I mean that I failed to identify that both enemy carriers were down south. In all my time playing on this map, I don't think I've ever seen the system spawn 2 carriers on the same side, which is why I didn't acknowledge it even though we visually saw the enemy Hosho and Langley behind the AFK St. Louis earlier.
Group 3, airborne.
But alas, we have confirmation, and it's time to finish the fight.
Group 4, maintaining present course. Group 2, awaiting instructions.
And much like the enemy New York earlier, this Langley is about to succumb to the same fate, thus reversing the tide of battle and securing our comeback victory.
Group 3, taking fire. Group 4, we're under attack. 4 returning. Group 3
Good game.
returning to
I hope you captains enjoyed this video and hopefully picked up some qualitative information that you can add to your repertoire. Feel free to ask any questions, and if you enjoyed this kind of content, leave a like, comment, or subscribe. In the next episode, I'll be exhibiting the Suiho and the Bogue, which is a hot matchup a lot of people don't particularly enjoy. Until next time, this is Boom Shaka Boxer, signing out.